Lisa pushed open the glass door of the boutique, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The air was cool, fragrant with expensive perfumes, but it did little to calm the storm brewing inside her. Her day had been a disaster. Another fight with her husband, a canceled meeting, and a growing sense of failure that gnawed at her like a persistent itch she couldn't scratch. As she scanned the racks, her eyes narrowed at the sight of a young man behind the counter. Dressed in a crisp white shirt and simple black slacks, he greeted her with a smile that seemed too calm, too content for someone in such a menial job. She couldn't explain why his ease irritated her so much. Perhaps it was the way he stood there, unbothered by the pressures of the world. Or maybe it was because, deep down, she envied his peace, even if she'd never admit it. "Can I help you with anything today, ma'am?" His voice was steady, polite, and for some reason, it grated on her nerves. Lisa scoffed. "Help me? Please, you work here. What could you possibly help me with?" The store clerk didn't flinch. "I could help you find something special. A gift, perhaps?" A gift. As if that's what she needed. Lisa crossed her arms and tilted her head, her lips curling into a sneer. "You think you know what's special? Working behind a counter all day? Fetching clothes for people who make more in an hour than you do in a week?" The words stung even as she said them. But the man didn't react. Instead, he offered a gentle smile, and that only fueled her irritation. "You must love playing the part of the saint," she continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Serving others, pretending to care." Eric, as his name tag revealed, simply nodded. "Everyone has their role, ma'am. Sometimes helping others can be more fulfilling than you'd think." Lisa rolled her eyes. "Spare me the wisdom. I don't have time for this." As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed with a notification. Another missed call from her husband. She paused, her heart sinking momentarily before she stuffed the phone back into her purse. Without a glance back, she stormed out of the store, missing the way Eric watched her go, his calm expression unchanging, but a flicker of something else, something deeper, passing through his eyes. Little did Lisa know, this wasn't the last time she would cross paths with Eric, and the next time, the truth about who he really was would shake her to the core. Lisa sank into the plush leather seat of her car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. She had barely made it out of the store before the wave of frustration crashed over her. The nerve of that clerk, so calm, so unruffled, as if nothing in the world could touch him. What did he know about real problems? Her mind raced, replaying every interaction from her disastrous morning. Her husband, Andrew, had barely spoken to her before rushing out the door for a business meeting, though Lisa knew by now that those meetings were more likely distractions from the cracks forming in their marriage. They barely connected anymore, and the distance between them felt more like a canyon with every passing day. She pressed a button on the dash and the car's engine purred to life, but she didn't drive away immediately. Instead, she stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror, taking in the expensive makeup, the perfectly styled hair, the designer clothes. On the outside, everything looked immaculate, just the way it was supposed to. But on the inside, a different story was unraveling. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her out of her thoughts. Another message from Andrew. "Won't be home for dinner tonight. Don't wait up." Lisa threw the phone onto the passenger seat in frustration, biting back the tears that threatened to well up. It wasn't just about the message. It was about everything. The long hours she had spent building a life that now felt hollow. The charity events, the fancy dinners, the endless social gatherings with people who didn't care about anything except appearances. Maybe it wasn't always like this, she thought. Maybe there was a time when things were simpler, when kindness actually mattered. But that time felt like a lifetime ago. Lisa tapped the steering wheel impatiently, trying to push away the nagging thoughts, but they clung to her like shadows she couldn't escape. The truth was, her life had become a series of carefully curated moments, perfect on the outside but devoid of meaning on the inside. And, for the first time, she couldn't ignore it. She pulled out of the parking lot and onto the main road, the city buzzing around her. Everywhere she looked, people were in motion, rushing from one place to another, heads down, lost in their own worlds. She wondered how many of them were like her, putting on a facade while quietly falling apart underneath. The image of the store clerk, Eric, flashed in her mind again. His calm, unbothered demeanor had infuriated her, but now, as she thought about it, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. How was it that someone like him, working a low-paying job, could seem so at peace, while she, with all her wealth and status, felt like her life was crumbling? The thought lingered, but Lisa quickly brushed it aside. "He's just a store clerk," she reminded herself. "What does he know about my life?" Still, the question nagged at her. What if Eric wasn't the one who had it all wrong? What if she was? Back at her penthouse, Lisa tried to lose herself in routine, but everything felt off. The spacious rooms, the panoramic city views, things that once made her feel powerful and secure, now seemed cold and uninviting. She walked past the grand piano that she hadn't touched in months, the empty dining room table and the art that lined the walls, wondering when her home had stopped feeling like a sanctuary. Her phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Rachel, one of her closest friends, or at least someone who had once been close to her. "Hey, Lisa, how's it going?" Rachel's voice was upbeat, but Lisa could hear the undertone of superficiality that had begun to grate on her in recent months. "Same as usual," Lisa replied, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "Busy." "Oh, you're always busy," Rachel said with a laugh. "Anyway, I was just calling to remind you about the gala next week. You've got to be there. Everyone's going to be talking about Andrew's business. Heard some rumors swirling around. Is everything okay?" Lisa froze, her heart skipping a beat. She hadn't told anyone about Andrew's business troubles, but clearly word had started to spread. "Everything's fine," Lisa lied, her voice tight. "Just rumors." "Good to hear. I'll see you at the gala then, right?" "Of course," Lisa said, though she knew the last thing she wanted was to spend another evening pretending everything was perfect. After the call ended, Lisa found herself pacing the room, anxiety gnawing at her. Andrew's business had been on the decline for months, but they had kept it quiet, hoping to weather the storm. Now, it seemed like the cracks were beginning to show, and the life they had worked so hard to build was at risk of unraveling. She walked over to the large windows that overlooked the city, her reflection staring back at her. For years, she had defined herself by her success, her marriage, her social status. But now, with everything hanging in the balance, she couldn't shake the feeling that it had all been a lie. And that was when the memory of Eric's serene expression hit her again, harder this time. How was it that he could face the world with such peace, while her own world was on the brink of collapse? Lisa's world is about to change even more dramatically. She will soon realize that the very person she mocked holds the key to unlocking a deeper understanding of her own life. Days after her troubling discovery about Andrew's business, Lisa couldn't stop thinking about that store clerk, Eric. It wasn't just the calmness he exhibited under her harsh words, it was something else, something that lingered in the back of her mind like a puzzle she couldn't piece together. She had dismissed him as beneath her, but now, for reasons she couldn't fully explain, she was compelled to know more about him. After an exhausting day of dealing with financial advisors and lawyers, people all reassuring her that things would be fine, but with a tone that hinted at skepticism, Lisa found herself drawn back to the boutique where she had first encountered Eric. As she entered the store, the familiar scent of expensive cologne and leather handbags filled the air. But this time, she wasn't there to shop. She scanned the room, her eyes finally landing on Eric, who was stocking shelves with the same quiet grace as before. Lisa hesitated, unsure of what she was even doing there. What would she say to him? That she regretted her words? That she was struggling with her own sense of worth? The very thought of admitting any kind of vulnerability to a stranger made her stomach turn, but something pushed her forward. Eric noticed her before she could retreat, a polite smile crossing his face as he approached her. "Good evening, ma'am. How can I assist you today?" Lisa swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in her throat. I just wanted to apologize for the way I acted the other day." Eric's expression didn't change. No judgment, no surprise, just that same calmness that had unsettled her from the start. "No need to apologize. We all have bad days." There it was again, that grace, that unfathomable peace. How could someone with his life be so content? "I don't understand you," Lisa blurted out before she could stop herself. "How are you like this? You're working in a job that most people would look down on, and yet you seem so at peace with it all." Eric paused, looking at her thoughtfully before answering. "I've learned that happiness doesn't come from what you have, but from who you are and how you choose to live." Lisa felt a pang of discomfort. It was exactly the opposite of how she had lived her life. Her identity had always been tied to her status, her wealth, her possessions. Without those, who was she? Eric glanced around the store, ensuring no one was listening, and then quietly said, "I wasn't always like this, you know. I had a life very different from the one you see now." This piqued Lisa's curiosity. She hadn't expected that. "What do you mean?" Eric smiled gently. "I used to have money. Quite a lot of it, actually. A different life, but I lost it all." Lisa's eyes widened, her interest now fully captured. "What happened?" "It's a long story," Eric replied, "but let's just say I learned the hard way that what's really important in life has nothing to do with money or status." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The words echoed inside her, as if he were speaking directly to her greatest fears. What if she lost it all too? Was she prepared for a life where her identity wasn't tied to wealth? "What do you do now?" Lisa asked, her voice softer, more genuine than before. "I help people in small ways," Eric said simply. "I work here because it keeps me grounded, reminds me of what matters. The interactions I have every day, they mean more to me than any corporate board meeting I used to attend." Lisa was stunned. This man, who she had mocked just days ago, had lived the life she feared losing. And yet, he wasn't bitter, he wasn't angry. In fact, he seemed free. Before she could ask him more, a customer interrupted, asking Eric for assistance. Lisa watched as he effortlessly switched into work mode, but her mind was spinning. There was more to his story, and she knew she had to hear it. Lisa left the store that evening feeling unsettled in a way she hadn't expected. Eric's revelation haunted her. How could someone lose everything and still find peace? It was a concept foreign to her, and it gnawed at her deeply. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse in Lisa's personal life. Andrew's business was failing faster than they had anticipated, and the financial pressures began to mount. Their once impenetrable life of luxury now felt fragile and on the verge of collapse. Late one night, after yet another argument with Andrew, Lisa sat alone in her massive, empty living room. She stared at the fireplace, the flames flickering but providing no warmth. The loneliness felt suffocating, and for the first time she couldn't keep it together. Tears spilled down her cheeks, unbidden and uncontrollable. She had always prided herself on her strength, her ability to push through hard times, but now everything felt pointless. What was the point of all this wealth, all these possessions, if she felt so utterly alone? And that's when she realized it. Eric had been right. Money didn't buy happiness. The life she had built, so carefully curated, was collapsing, and she had nothing to fall back on. No sense of self beyond the status she had clung to for so long. In a moment of desperation, she grabbed her phone and typed in the boutique's number. It was late, but something told her that Eric might still be there. When the phone rang, she prayed silently that he would answer. "Hello, this is Eric," came the calm voice on the other end of the line. Lisa took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Eric, it's Lisa. I don't know why I'm calling, but I need to talk." There was a pause on the other end, and then Eric's voice came through, gentle but steady. "Of course, Lisa. What's going on?" And that's when Lisa broke down completely, sobbing into the phone as she poured out all her fears, her insecurities, and her regrets. She told him about Andrew, about the business, about how empty she felt despite everything she had. She told him about how lost she was, how she didn't know who she was without the wealth and status. Eric listened quietly, never interrupting, just letting her speak. When she was finally done, drained from the emotional outpouring, there was a long silence. "You're not alone, Lisa," Eric finally said, his voice full of warmth. "You're going through something incredibly hard, but this is also an opportunity to find out who you really are, without all the external things. It's not easy, but it's worth it." Lisa wiped her tears, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over her. She wasn't sure what was happening, but something inside her was shifting. Maybe Eric was right. Maybe this was her chance to start over, to figure out what really mattered. And, for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Lisa's journey of transformation has only begun. But as she leans on Eric for support, she'll soon discover even more about his past. Secrets that will change the way she sees everything, including herself. Lisa didn't go back to the boutique for a while after that late-night phone call, but her conversations with Eric stayed with her, replaying in her mind during quiet moments. His words had resonated more deeply than she expected. Slowly, she found herself questioning everything: her relationship with Andrew, her obsession with status, her self-worth. Her life had once seemed picture-perfect, but now it felt as fragile as glass, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. One afternoon, after another long, fruitless meeting about Andrew's business, Lisa couldn't resist the pull any longer. She returned to the boutique, walking in this time without the bravado she once carried. Eric was there, as usual, his calm presence like a balm to her restless spirit. "Lisa," Eric greeted her with a warm smile. "It's good to see you." Lisa returned the smile, though hers was tentative. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about finding out who I am without all this." She gestured vaguely around the store, meaning not just the clothes and luxury items, but the entire lifestyle she had built her identity around. Eric nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "It's not easy to let go of something that's defined you for so long, but you've taken the first step, and that's what matters." Lisa felt a weight lift slightly at his words, but there was something else nagging at her. Something she needed to know. "Eric," she began cautiously, "the other day, you said you used to have money. A different life. I can't stop wondering what happened. How did you end up here?" Eric's expression didn't change, but Lisa could see something shift in his eyes. He was quiet for a moment, as if weighing whether or not to tell her. Then, with a deep breath, he began to speak. "I grew up in a wealthy family. My father was a successful businessman, and I was set to follow in his footsteps. I went to the best schools, lived in the nicest houses, but there was always something missing. I never really felt connected to that life. It was like I was living someone else's dream, not mine." Lisa listened intently, hanging on every word. She hadn't expected this. Eric had come from wealth, just like her, but his path had taken a very different turn. "I tried to live up to my family's expectations," Eric continued. "I took over my father's company when he passed away, and for a while things were fine. But I wasn't happy. I made bad decisions, both in business and in my personal life. Eventually, the company collapsed under my leadership." He paused, his gaze distant, as if reliving the memories. "I lost everything: my family's fortune, my home, my status. But in the process, I realized that none of those things had made me happy. They were just distractions from the emptiness I felt inside." Lisa's heart ached as she listened. His story was eerily similar to her own fears. What if she was heading down the same path? What if she lost everything too? "What did you do?" she asked softly. "How did you move on?" Eric smiled, but it was a sad, knowing smile. "I had to start over. I had to rebuild my life from nothing, and in doing so, I realized that the things I had once thought were important, money, status, power, didn't matter. What mattered were the relationships I built, the people I helped, the kindness I could offer, even when I had nothing." Lisa felt a lump form in her throat. She had spent so much of her life focused on accumulating wealth, on maintaining an image of success, but Eric had found something more meaningful in the aftermath of his losses. He had found peace. "And now?" she asked. "Are you happy?" Eric's smile softened. Happier than I ever was when I had money. I have a simple life, but it's mine. I work here because I enjoy connecting with people, helping them in small ways. It gives me purpose." Lisa stood there, letting his words sink in. Everything she had been taught, everything she had believed about what made a person successful, was unraveling. Eric had lost it all, and yet he had found something far more valuable than wealth. Suddenly, her own problems seemed both overwhelming and insignificant at the same time. She wasn't sure how to move forward from here, but one thing was clear: her life couldn't stay the same. The days that followed were difficult for Lisa. Andrew's business troubles continued to escalate, and their marriage became increasingly strained. They barely spoke, and when they did, it was only about the logistics of their failing finances. The love they had once shared seemed to have disappeared entirely, replaced by resentment and frustration. But something inside Lisa was changing. Inspired by Eric's story, she began to reevaluate everything: her marriage, her priorities, her sense of self. She had always believed that success was defined by wealth and status, but now she wasn't so sure. One evening, after yet another silent dinner with Andrew, Lisa decided to confront him. She couldn't continue living like this, pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. "Andrew, we need to talk," she said, her voice firm but gentle. Andrew looked up from his phone, surprised. "About what?" "About us. About everything." Lisa took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I know things haven't been good between us for a long time. We've been so focused on our careers, on maintaining this lifestyle, that we've lost sight of what really matters." Andrew frowned, clearly uncomfortable. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't want to keep pretending anymore," Lisa replied. "I don't care about the money, the house, the status. I care about us, about whether we can find a way to reconnect and rebuild what we've lost." Andrew stared at her, taken aback. For a moment, Lisa thought he might argue, but then something in his expression softened. "I didn't realize you felt that way," he said quietly. "I've been so caught up in trying to save the business that I haven't stopped to think about what we've been losing in the process." Lisa reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "We've both been lost, but maybe we can find our way back, together." It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Lisa and Andrew began to have real conversations, opening up to each other in ways they hadn't in years. Slowly, the walls between them began to crumble, and they started to rebuild their relationship, not on the foundation of wealth, but on honesty, compassion, and a shared commitment to each other. And as Lisa's personal life began to heal, so did her sense of purpose. Inspired by Eric's example, she started volunteering at local shelters, donating her time and energy to causes that mattered. It wasn't easy. There were moments when she still felt the pull of her old life, the desire for status and recognition, but with each act of kindness she felt herself growing stronger, more fulfilled. One day, as Lisa walked past the boutique where Eric worked, she decided to stop in and thank him. She owed him more than he could ever know. His wisdom, his kindness, had helped her transform her life. When she entered the store, Eric greeted her with the same calm smile, as if he had been expecting her. "Lisa," he said warmly, "how are you?" "I'm better," she replied, smiling. "Thanks to you." Eric shook his head. "You did the work. I just gave you a little push." Lisa felt a surge of gratitude well up inside her. "You gave me more than a push. You helped me see what really matters." Eric's eyes twinkled with quiet understanding. Sometimes, all it takes is a small act of kindness to change someone's life. Lisa nodded, her heart full. "Thank you, Eric, for everything." As she left the store, Lisa felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her life was still far from perfect. Andrew's business was still in trouble, and there were plenty of challenges ahead, but for the first time she wasn't afraid. She knew who she was now, and she knew that kindness, not wealth, was the true measure of a life well lived. Lisa left the store that day with a newfound sense of purpose, but she knew her journey wasn't complete. Her transformation had started, but there was more work to do. both within herself and in the relationships she had damaged over the years. One relationship, in particular, weighed heavily on her mind, her strained connection with her parents. Growing up, Lisa had been close to her mother, but as she became more obsessed with status and wealth, she drifted away from her family. She hadn't spoken to them in months, ashamed of how different her life had become from the simple values they had taught her. Now, with everything she had learned from Eric, she realized that it was time to rebuild that bridge. If she could reconnect with her family, perhaps she could finally find the deeper peace she had been searching for. Later that evening, after thinking it over, Lisa dialed her mother's number. Her heart raced as the phone rang, each passing second filled with doubt. What if her mother didn't want to hear from her? What if she couldn't find the right words to fix what had been broken? "Hello?" Her mother's voice was soft but unmistakable. "Mom, it's me," Lisa said, her voice shaking slightly. There was a pause on the other end, and Lisa feared the worst. But then her mother spoke, her tone gentle and full of warmth. "Lisa, it's so good to hear from you." A wave of relief washed over Lisa. "I've been thinking about you and Dad a lot lately. I'm sorry I haven't called. I've been so caught up in everything, and I think I lost sight of what really matters." Her mother sighed, but it wasn't in frustration. "We've missed you, Lisa. We've always hoped you'd find your way back to us." Tears filled Lisa's eyes. She had spent so many years pushing her family away, convinced that her life in the fast lane was more important than the values they had instilled in her. Now, as she stood on the edge of rediscovering herself, she realized just how wrong she had been. "I want to come visit," Lisa said, her voice thick with emotion. "I want to fix things, if you'll let me." Her mother didn't hesitate. "Of course, Lisa. Come home whenever you're ready. We'll be here." For the first time in years, Lisa felt a genuine connection to her past, one that wasn't tainted by the desire for wealth or status. She hung up the phone with a sense of purpose, knowing that returning to her roots was the next step in her journey of self-discovery. Lisa's visit to her childhood home was both familiar and jarring. The house, a modest, cozy structure on the outskirts of town, was worlds away from the sleek, modern penthouse she had grown accustomed to. But there was comfort in its simplicity. The worn wood floors, the family photos that lined the walls, the smell of her mother's cooking. It all reminded Lisa of the person she used to be before she got lost in the allure of wealth. Her parents greeted her with open arms, their smiles filled with warmth and love. They didn't ask too many questions about her absence, instead focusing on making her feel welcome. Over the course of the next few days, Lisa found herself reconnecting not just with her parents, but with her own values. The life she had left behind wasn't glamorous, but it was filled with love, support, and kindness, the very things she had spent years searching for in all the wrong places. One afternoon, while sitting on the porch with her mother, Lisa opened up about her struggles. She told her mother about Andrew's failing business, the tension in their marriage, and how she had lost sight of what mattered most. Her mother listened quietly, letting Lisa pour her heart out without interruption. When Lisa finished, her mother took her hand and squeezed it gently. "You've been through a lot, Lisa," her mother said softly, "but I'm proud of you for recognizing what's truly important. It takes a lot of courage to admit when you've gone down the wrong path." Lisa nodded, feeling the weight of her mother's words. "I just don't know how to fix everything. Andrew and we're so far apart now, and I don't even know who I am without all the wealth and status." Her mother smiled gently. "You're stronger than you think, and you're more than just what you have. You always have been. Andrew loves you, Lisa, but you both need to find each other again, outside of the life you've built. Start small, be kind to yourself, and take things one step at a time." Lisa let the words sink in, knowing her mother was right. She had spent so much time trying to hold on to a life that was slipping away, but maybe it was time to let go and find something deeper, something real. When Lisa returned to the city, she felt more grounded, more centered than she had in a long time. But there was still a major hurdle she needed to face: her marriage with Andrew. They had been drifting apart for years, and she knew that if they didn't make a real effort to reconnect, Their relationship might not survive. One evening, after weeks of avoiding the hard conversations, Lisa sat down with Andrew. He looked tired, defeated even. The stress of the business had taken its toll on him, and Lisa could see the cracks in his once confident demeanor. "Andrew," she began gently, "I know things have been hard lately. With the business, with us, but I don't want to keep pretending everything is fine when it's not." Andrew sighed, rubbing his temples. "I don't know what to do, Lisa. The business is falling apart, and I feel like I'm failing at everything. I'm sorry I haven't been there for you, but I've been so focused on trying to keep everything from crashing down." "I know," Lisa said softly, "but I'm not talking about the business. I'm talking about us. We've both been so caught up in our own struggles that we've forgotten how to be there for each other." Andrew looked at her, a flicker of something, hope, perhaps, in his eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I want to fight for us," Lisa replied, her voice steady. "But we can't keep living like this. We need to figure out who we are outside of the wealth, the status, the business. We need to find each other again." Andrew was silent for a long moment, and Lisa wondered if he was going to shut her out. But then he reached across the table and took her hand in his. "I want that too," he said quietly. "I miss us, Lisa. I miss the way we used to be before all of this." They sat there in the quiet, holding hands, and for the first time in a long time, Lisa felt a glimmer of hope. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was worth fighting for. And if they could rebuild it, just as she was rebuilding herself, there was a chance for something even stronger. With Andrew on board, Lisa felt a renewed sense of purpose. They started making small changes in their lives, spending more time together without the distractions of work or social obligations. They sold their penthouse, downsizing to a more modest home that better reflected the life they wanted to build, a life focused on connection, not materialism. Lisa also continued volunteering, finding fulfillment in giving back to others. The act of helping those in need reminded her of Eric's words, that true happiness came not from what you had, but from how you treated others. It wasn't always easy, but each act of kindness brought her closer to the person she wanted to become. One day, as she walked through the park after volunteering at a local shelter, Lisa spotted Eric sitting on a bench, reading a book. She approached him with a smile, grateful for the role he had played in her transformation. "Eric," she called, and he looked up, his face lighting up with recognition. "Lisa," he said, closing his book. "It's good to see you. How's everything?" Lisa sat down next to him, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "It's better. A lot better, actually. I've been thinking about what you said, about finding happiness in kindness. It's changed everything for me." Eric smiled, his calm presence as steady as ever. "I'm glad to hear that. You've come a long way." "I couldn't have done it without you," Lisa admitted. "You helped me see what I couldn't on my own." Eric shook his head gently. "You were ready to see it. I just helped you along the way." As they sat in the quiet of the park, Lisa realized that her journey wasn't about reaching a destination. It was about the path she was on, the choices she made each day to be kinder, more compassionate, and more connected to the people around her. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly at peace. While Lisa's transformation had been deeply personal, Andrew's own journey was just beginning. The weight of the business failure still pressed heavily on him, and despite Lisa's new outlook on life, he struggled to see a path forward for himself. The business world had been his identity for so long that without it, he felt lost. One evening, after they had moved into their more modest home, Andrew sat alone in the living room, his thoughts swirling. Lisa was out volunteering again, something that had become a new normal for her. He admired the peace she seemed to have found, but he hadn't been able to find that same sense of purpose. Staring at his laptop, which still displayed the latest grim financial figures, Andrew felt a familiar sense of dread wash over him. The business was gone. No matter how many sleepless nights he spent trying to figure out a way to save it, the truth was undeniable. He was officially a failure. Or, at least, that's how it felt. The phone rang, jolting him out of his thoughts. He saw the number and hesitated, recognizing it as his lawyer. He let it ring once more before picking it up. "Andrew," the voice on the other end greeted him. "I wanted to go over some final details about the bankruptcy filing. Are you sure you want to proceed with this? It's the last step, and once we finalize, it's done." Andrew took a deep breath, the finality of it hitting him harder than he expected. "Yes," he said, his voice tight. "Let's get it done." After the call ended, Andrew sank back into his chair, staring at the ceiling. It was over. The business, his legacy, gone. He had always prided himself on being the one to provide, the one who could handle the pressures of a high-flying life. But now that he had nothing left to provide, who was he? Later that night, Lisa returned home to find him in the same spot. She immediately noticed the tension in his body, the exhaustion in his eyes. "Andrew," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "What's going on?" He looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and sorrow. "It's over, Lisa. The business is officially gone. I filed for bankruptcy today." Lisa nodded, her expression empathetic. She had known this was coming, but hearing him say it out loud still felt like the end of an era. "I'm sorry," she whispered, sitting down beside him. "I don't know what to do now," Andrew admitted, his voice cracking. "My whole life was wrapped up in that business. Without it, I feel like I'm nothing." Lisa squeezed his hand, her heart aching for him. She had been where he was, standing on the precipice of losing everything that had once defined her. But now, after her own transformation, she saw things differently. "You're not nothing, Andrew," she said firmly. "The business might be gone, but that doesn't define who you are. You have so much more to offer the world than just your success in business." Andrew looked at her, his expression doubtful. "Like what? I've spent my entire life climbing the corporate ladder. I don't know how to do anything else." Lisa smiled softly, remembering her conversations with Eric and the lessons she had learned from her own journey. "Maybe this is your chance to figure that out, to discover who you are outside of all of that." Andrew shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Lisa insisted. "It's not going to be easy, but you don't have to figure it out alone. We'll do it together." For a long time, Andrew didn't say anything. The weight of everything that had happened felt like too much to bear. But as he looked into Lisa's eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. "I don't even know where to start," he admitted. Lisa smiled gently. "Start small. Start by letting go of the idea that your worth is tied to your success. Start by being kind to yourself, and then, little by little, you'll find a new path." Andrew sighed, but he nodded, knowing deep down that she was right. It wouldn't be easy, but maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward after all. As Lisa and Andrew began to rebuild their lives together, they made a point to focus on the things that truly mattered: their relationship, their health, and their sense of purpose. But even as they grew closer, Lisa felt a nagging sense of unfinished business. Eric had played such a pivotal role in her transformation, but she hadn't truly thanked him for everything he had done. One afternoon, while Andrew was out looking into new career opportunities, Lisa decided to visit Eric at the boutique. She hadn't been there in a while, and as she walked through the familiar glass doors, she felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. Eric greeted her with the same calm smile he always had. "Lisa," he said warmly, "it's good to see you again. How's everything going?" Lisa smiled back, feeling a sense of warmth she hadn't expected. "Things are better," she replied. "A lot better, actually. Andrew and I have been working on things, and we're in a much better place now." "That's good to hear," Eric said, his eyes twinkling with quiet pride. "But I came here because I wanted to thank you," Lisa continued, her voice growing more serious. "You've done more for me than you realize. If it weren't for our conversations, I don't know if I would have been able to find the strength to make the changes I needed to." Eric shook his head humbly. "You found the strength within yourself, Lisa. I just helped point you in the right direction." Lisa felt a lump form in her throat, the emotion of the moment hitting her harder than she expected. "Still, I owe you a lot, more than I can ever repay." Eric smiled gently. Kindness isn't something you repay. It's something you pass on. The best thing you can do is to keep moving forward, keep helping others, and keep living the life you've discovered. Lisa nodded, blinking back the tears that had suddenly welled up in her eyes. I will, she promised. I won't forget what you've taught me. As she left the boutique that day, Lisa felt a deep sense of closure. Eric had been a guide in her journey, but now it was up to her to continue on her path. There was still so much she had to learn, so many ways she could grow, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to embrace whatever came next. Months passed, and life for Lisa and Andrew began to stabilize. They had both let go of their old lives, embracing a simpler, more meaningful existence. Andrew had found a new job, one that didn't involve high stakes or corporate pressures, but instead allowed him to work with people and make a difference in small but impactful ways. It wasn't the life he had imagined for himself, but it brought him a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Lisa, too, had found her purpose in volunteering and helping others. She had become deeply involved in the local community, organizing charity events, mentoring young women, and working at shelters for the homeless. Each act of kindness reminded her of the lessons she had learned from Eric, and each day she felt more fulfilled than she ever had during her years of chasing wealth. One evening, as they sat together in their cozy new home, Andrew turned to Lisa with a thoughtful expression. You know, I've been thinking, he said. We've both learned so much over the past year. Maybe we could help others who are going through what we went through. Lisa raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? I mean, we could start something, a foundation, maybe. Something that helps people who've lost everything and don't know how to start over. Lisa's eyes lit up with excitement. The idea was perfect. A way to give back, to help others who were struggling to find their way just as they had. That's an incredible idea, she said, her voice full of enthusiasm. We could really make a difference. And so, with renewed purpose, Lisa and Andrew began working on their new project together. It wasn't about money or status. It was about offering hope to those who had lost their way. It was about kindness, empathy, and transformation, the very things that had saved them. And as they embarked on this new chapter of their lives, Lisa couldn't help but smile, knowing that the journey she had started with Eric's quiet guidance had led her to something far greater than she had ever imagined. Though Lisa and Andrew's story is beginning to take shape, they will soon face unexpected challenges as they attempt to build their foundation and navigate the complexities of helping others. But with the lessons they've learned and the strength they've found in each other, they're prepared to face whatever comes next. As Lisa and Andrew began building their foundation, the excitement of their new mission was quickly met with the harsh realities of starting something from scratch. They faced bureaucratic hurdles, funding challenges, and skepticism from people who doubted their motives. The path wasn't easy, and there were moments when both Lisa and Andrew questioned whether they were capable of making a difference. But every time they hit a roadblock, they remembered their own journey, the struggles they had overcome together, and the transformation that had changed both of their lives. Lisa often thought back to Eric's words about small acts of kindness and how even the smallest gesture could change someone's life. That belief kept her grounded, reminding her that real change didn't happen overnight, but slowly, through consistent effort and genuine compassion. One day, after weeks of hard work, Lisa and Andrew hosted their first event, an open house for people who had lost their jobs or homes, offering them resources, counseling, and a sense of hope. The turnout was small, but the impact was real. Lisa saw the spark of hope in the eyes of people who had been struggling, and it reminded her of where she had been not so long ago. She knew then that even if their foundation only helped a few people at a time, it was worth it. Months passed, and the foundation slowly began to grow. The couple's efforts caught the attention of local businesses and charities, and soon more people began to support their cause. But despite the foundation's success, Lisa always carried Eric's influence with her, wondering how his life had changed. One afternoon, Lisa decided to visit Eric again. She hadn't seen him since their last conversation at the boutique, and she wanted to update him on the foundation and how his wisdom had shaped her life. When she arrived at the boutique, however, she was surprised to find that Eric no longer worked there. The manager informed her that Eric had left to pursue his own passion, helping others full-time. Intrigued, Lisa tracked him down to a community center where he had started a similar project, working with underprivileged youth and helping people transition out of homelessness. Seeing Eric in his element, quietly, humbly changing lives, reminded Lisa of the incredible journey she had been on. When Eric spotted her, his face lit up with the same calm smile that had always put her at ease. "I heard about the foundation," Eric said as they sat down to talk. "You've done amazing things, Lisa." Lisa smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you. You showed me what kindness can really do. I owe so much of this to you." Eric shook his head, as humble as ever. "You did the hard work. I just helped you see what was already inside you." As they talked, Lisa realized that while her story had started with a moment of humiliation and anger, it had led to something beautiful, a life dedicated to helping others. And now, Eric was doing the same, quietly transforming the lives of those around him. In the months and years that followed, Lisa and Andrew's foundation grew into a thriving organization. They helped hundreds of people rebuild their lives, offering hope where there had once been none. Each act of kindness, each connection made, felt like a continuation of the lessons they had learned through their own struggles. Lisa and Andrew's marriage, once on the brink of collapse, was stronger than ever. They had discovered a deeper connection, one built not on wealth or status, but on mutual respect, love, and a shared sense of purpose. They had learned to communicate, to support one another, and to face challenges together. One evening, as they sat in their modest living room, reflecting on how far they had come, Lisa looked at Andrew and smiled. "We really did it, didn't we?" she said softly. Andrew nodded, his eyes warm with affection. "Yeah, we did, and it's only the beginning." Lisa thought back to the woman she had been before, angry, disconnected, consumed by the need for wealth and status. She realized now that losing everything had been the best thing that had ever happened to her. It had stripped away the superficial layers of her life and revealed what truly mattered: love, kindness, and the impact she could make on the world. And as Lisa looked toward the future, she knew that no matter what challenges came her way, she would face them with the same strength and compassion that had brought her this far. Years later, Lisa and Andrew's foundation became a well-known force in the community, with branches in several cities and thousands of people whose lives had been changed by their work. Their story was one of resilience, transformation, and, above all, the power of kindness. As Lisa and Andrew stood at the opening of a new community center, surrounded by people whose lives had been touched by their foundation, Lisa spotted a familiar face in the crowd: Eric, smiling from a distance, quietly proud of all they had accomplished. In that moment, Lisa felt the full weight of her journey: the highs, the lows, the moments of doubt, and the moments of triumph. She had learned that kindness, even in the face of hardship, could create ripples that reached far beyond anything she could have imagined. And, as she and Andrew cut the ribbon on the new center, Lisa knew that their legacy wouldn't be measured in wealth or material success, but in the lives they had touched and the kindness they had spread. It was a legacy of love, compassion, and transformation. A legacy that had begun with a single moment in a boutique, a moment that had changed everything. As Lisa and Andrew discovered, life isn't about the wealth you accumulate or the status you cling to. It's about the kindness you share and the impact you have on others. Their journey shows us that even when we lose everything, we can still find purpose, love, and meaning through compassion and connection. Whether it's a small act of kindness or a life-changing moment, every gesture has the power to transform not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Sometimes it takes losing what we think is important to discover what truly matters. If this story touched you, we encourage you to think about the acts of kindness in your own life. Have you experienced a moment that changed your perspective, helped you grow, or transformed your path? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience could inspire someone else to reflect on the power of kindness in their own lives. And remember, no act of kindness is ever too small. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that compassion can change everything. Together, let's spread kindness and transformation.